Hello, friends. Welcome to Akul Mic Live, and I'm Chandrakant. Most of us have gone through this horrible time during pandemic. In fact, some of us are still going, and I think it's a totally different experience. And therefore, we thought that we will talk about this today. To discuss this matter, I'll be joined by a very senior, very seasoned professional, Mr. Kevin Cottam. He is the CEO of GoNomading Pte Limited, joining us from Singapore. And incidentally, he has also come out of a quarantine situation, a home isolation situation. So we will discuss more about it. We will know how the experience is. So let's welcome Kevin to the show. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, I love the drum roll. Thanks so much, Chandra. It's great to be back again on the show, and I'm very much looking forward to today because this is it's an interesting period that I come out today, especially.
Well, Kevin, you're looking good, even though your voice is slightly different. I think you're feeling better. I hope you don't have any fever or anything after the situation.
Yeah, no, I've actually had what I would call COVID light, and I've been very lucky, and I'm very grateful for having the vaccine. So, yeah, I mean, I just came out of the quarantine at 12 noon today, so I'm free to walk away from the room that I'm in. And in fact, I'm sitting in now. I've been sitting in for a week or 10 days. And yeah, I mean, I haven't had a lot of challenges. I lost the smell and I lost a little bit of taste, not so much. I didn't have a fever. And of course, you can hear my deep and raspy voice. And so this is some people say, have been telling me, my clients, I want you to keep that voice. It's very sexy. And I say, I'm not sure it's going to stay, but enjoy it while it can. So yeah, that's what I'm very lucky and I'm very grateful for that.
Well, Kevin, good to see you, hale and hearty. And why don't you share your experience, how you spent 10 days of home isolation, quarantine. What was your experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all share it in slightly differently, and a lot of people, and I completely honor the people that have had challenges, really severe challenges with COVID, and also those that have lost family members and people, and friends, etc. I mean, it is not so great. And I think that one of the things was that when I turned positive was like the startle, right? It's like, oh no, I have the mark. And I think that that was the first turning point of, oh, I'm not infallible. I can actually get this virus. And so I think that what happened is that there took a few days for me to sort of figure out what was this, why was I in, how do I deal with being in a home with two other people that are also ended up having to stay very locked away from me, and we have to just text each other to say I need to go to the toilet, or I need to wash my hands, or something like this, or I need to get some water, or they would knock on the door and say your food is ready. And it became very strange and surreal in some ways. But what happened was that I decided to meditate a lot. I meditated 3 times a day to very high frequency meditational music. And I was recommended to do so by people that do meditation on a big level, and to drive, in many ways, drive the virus away from me so that I stay above it. And at the same time, I took a lot of time to just rest. And I took time I was working on a speech, which I did on Sunday. And so I slowly took my time to work on it and write it. And then I was also preparing for another speech for PayPal next week. And so I just slowly did this. And I love the slowness because it allowed me to reflect an awful lot. And I began to reflect on what's important to me. What's important to my life, and who are the important people around me. I started to reflect on what is the business that I'm doing. And I began to realize that it started to shift. And the shift has been very much towards sustainability. And it's also that with this, that I realize that the nomadic mindset is, in actual fact, a very important process in understanding sustainability, because we have this incredibly narrow thinking a lot of the time. And the nomadic mindset allows you to the space and the interconnection with nature. And that is what has created this COVID, is our disconnection with nature. Is that it started, as we know, the viral spillover from animals to humans. And that's how it all came about. And so what does that mean if we back that up? It means that we are deforesting. We are using animals in the wrong way. We are getting too close to wild animals, and the spillover to domesticated animals and then to humans is becoming more and more interconnected. And as I was just reading an article 2 days ago about from the UN, was this spillover is going to increase and increase, and these pandemics are going to get worse and worse if we do not stop this living the way we are. And that is tearing down forests, which is creating the climate change, which is creating biodiversity, which is creating all of these knock-on effects. And of course, the human is getting the spill of these viruses. And they're not going to be any easier, and it's going to cost more and more and more, and trillions of dollars. Whereas if we stop all of those other aspects, it's much less expensive. And we won't have to worry so much about the spillover. So it doesn't take a lot of brain cells to think about it. And so that's what part of this all sort of came about during this period. And I listened to a lot of classical music and a variety of inspirational music. And it was really a delightful time. And I just thought, I want more of this. And this has shifted me to start thinking about how I want my business to be, how I want my life to be. I don't want it to be rushing and tearing around. I want it to be sustainable. I want to think of nature. I want to think of humans. I want to think of, how we can succeed in a different way, not the bottom line on an ongoing basis, and not stakeholders and shareholders. And I don't want to think about that necessarily. I want to think about humanity within organizations and how we can do that. And not to say that I wasn't, but this is what has come out of this, which I believe I feel so much more buoyant, actually. And I have to say, much calmer. And because, a lot of the time I would look at social media. And also the other thing was I took myself off social media. I didn't even talk about the fact that I had COVID. I didn't want people to know. I didn't want to even have this interaction, because I just thought, no, I need to heal. And the other word that came up for me, two words, are healing and recovery. And recovery, one of the most important words that we can have in our well-being and mental health. You know how in really athletes talk about the recovery is almost, if not more important than the actual training and actual competing, because the recovery, the body needs to recover. And then from the pushing that you've given it, and then it becomes stronger. And then you work harder and train more. And then you recover, so that you have this back and forth. And you know what? COVID has shown us that we have to do this. We have to recover. And people say, oh no, we got to keep pushing. And that's where the problems are. We can't keep pushing. We're human beings. We need this meditation. We need this reflection. We need this soulful time. And that is one thing that has just really become so ingrained with me at the moment. And that's why I wanted to just voice that today, because this is what coming out has been for me. And it is like a coming out in some ways. And, they advise you to stay longer in less social contact. And so I will for some days, just moving slowly into coming back. But that's what's really come about for me is these words: healing, recovery, sustainability, humanity, the well-being of the planet. All of these things have become so minced in my head and my heart. And I think that's one of the pieces that I keep forgetting. Someone told me, in actual fact, that the reason that you got COVID is because you needed this recovery and this healing. And, you know, depending on how you see things in the world, this has happened to me before, is that when I got to a certain state of stress and whichever in my body would start reacting, but I wasn't never listening until something hit me. It's like, you know, getting hit. You know, you have to have a big hit before you start to wake up. But why do we have to have the big hit before we wake up? You know, I'm sure you've had that experience and you've talked about that and heard people talk about that, Chandra. And so why do we have to have that? Why are we so stupid?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I think you're raising very pertinent points. And in fact, everyone is affected by this and many other experiences. And the good thing is that we are live on all social media platforms, at least 5 or 6 right now. So if people who want to communicate with Kevin, they can write using the chat function and post their questions. Well, I think the big question now, from what you are telling me, is you raised this point about environment and friendliness among people, etc. But I think on the contrary, the world is moving totally different, you know. So very briefly, what is your message? Because we are live right now. What is your message to people, very briefly, before we move on to the next one, about fixing the environment and how to live in a harmony with the environment? What do you like to tell the people?
I just want to say that the most important thing, if we are going to survive as human beings, and I don't mean just us right now, depending on the age that we're in, but for the generations to come, and I think that's what we have to think about, is that it's about humanity. We need survival, and we need to think about the coming together, the interconnection of all of the ecosystems, and appreciating and honoring it, that they all give us something to survive and something to live with, instead of it just being us, being me. We cannot be this me. It is all interconnections for the wholeness. We just need to think of everything, the whole planet as one, the whole climate as one, nature, animals, us as one. And I believe that that is what's important, is we are one and interconnected beings with every ecosystem, and we must survive. And that's must survival. We must pay attention, deep attention.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for giving this important message. Hope people listen and understand. But I think you mentioned about a very important point. One was that, hey, I am also affected by this, you know. So unless you get it, you don't realize that, hey, you're not such a special person, you know, you can get it. So the question that I want to ask you is, this pandemic is creating a new reality for everyone across the world, length and breadth, wherever you are, even in Antarctica, you can get COVID. What is the learning that people must have, or how they should change themselves to cope up with this new reality? What is your observation?
Yeah, I mean, we're all in this together. I mean, you cannot separate it. And so you know, people, the naysayers say, oh, no, about vaccination, or no, there's no climate change, or, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's nonsense. It's total nonsense. And until you get COVID, you don't realize the challenges. You hear from people that have been naysayers and gone partying just to get COVID and whichever, and then have, just before they died, said, it's a real thing. You know, it's like, you know, it can kill you. Absolutely. Anything can kill you. But the point here, I believe, is that, as I said before, is that we need to come together and understand that these types of viruses are going to increase if we do not change our way of living, our way of thinking, our way of commercializing, our way of abundance, of too many things, of materialism. All of these things we can have, but why do we need the massive amounts of it? We don't need it. And this is what is creating all of these other effects, because people then want more, spend more money, more. And we've created this monster. The monster has come back to haunt us. And so, and the monster is just this one. So, let's look at it from a very wide perspective, as a nomad would. And that is that all interconnected pieces are real, that we are a mirror of nature. Nature is our mirror. And whatever happens in nature will happen within us. And so consequently, organizations are the same. They are not separate from nature. They all have environments. They all have different types of environments. And what is the environment and culture that you want to have within an organization? It needs to also be nomadic in its thinking, so it can be sustainable, has a wide perspective. So it sees things not narrowly of just the bottom line and KPIs and all sorts of things. No, it's about human beings. Again, we're trying to, last night I was on a coaching session, for example, with a group of coaches, and they were talking about we need to have KPIs to see how people are doing in performance reviews. And I just think, why do we have to have numbers to number us? When I was with in Namibia and with the Himba tribe, they have many, many children. And I asked, well, how many children do they have? To the chief. And he says, I don't know how many children I have. And I said, what do you mean you don't know how many children you have? And my interpreter said to me, who is from the Himba tribe there, he says, we don't count. Why don't we count? Why don't you count? I asked you. And they said, because we believe each person is equal to the other. And that we don't want to say this one, number 1 child is better than number 3 child or number 5 child. No. We want them to all be treated equally. So my question is, why do we have to number ourselves when organizations or number us? It's just a way of documenting us, but we become a numbered piece within an organization instead of just a human, a person that is giving to the benefit of not only themselves, but also to the teams that they work with and with the organization and then with the others outside. So, our whole message truly is that we are interconnected. And that is what you need from understanding the nomadic mindset. It is an interconnected mindset. It is not separationist. So, and that is what has got us into this as well, as the separatedness of everything. We separate, we need more meat. So we cut down in the Amazon more rainforest because people want to eat more meat. And instead of, well, we better not, because that creates more methane. And then it all just becomes this, add-on cycle of food chain of disaster. I'm a vegetarian. And India has so many vegetarians, and it's and it's this belief system of how you respect nature and the cow and the and animals, which is so important. I don't know where we went wrong in the other parts of the world, but anyway, you have some real strong values in this particular sense, which is sustainable. So anyway, I could go on forever. I can see that, right? Sorry.
So Kevin, I think you narrated a fantastic story from Namibia, where the chief don't count the children. I think it's amazing message. There is the underlying message which has to be very clear among people. But I think I have one more question remaining, which is related to SDGs. Now, SDGs are given by United Nations. There are SDG goals.
Yes.
So SDG stands for sustainability goals for every organization, for every human being. And there is a process defined by UN. But in 2019, 2020, we got hit by pandemic. So do you think
Yes.
that sustainability goals that the UN has set it has to be rewritten now, or those SDG goals are still valid? What is your opinion?
Okay, so I talked to the sustainability conference at a summit out of India just a couple of weeks ago, and I was working on the number 3. And so what I suggest is that the mindset that was created at the very beginning in 2015 was a very different mindset that we need to see the world today. And so consequently, yes, that they were a great initiative, amazing initiative, and very important, and the science behind it is extremely important. However, today we need a different mindset to see where we are at and what is needed. What I suggested because I was on the education sustainability development goal. And I said, I was talking about, you can't just sort of copy and paste education. Education has not grown or changed in a lot of the different ways forward in the last 30, 40, 50 years, and teaching of it. And it needs for children in developing countries in a variety of different places, that you can't just copy and paste. Yes, education is fantastic, but we need to see it from the needs of what is now moving forward. And that's a very different need that was in 2015. We have become so fast in the digitization, we need to leapfrog some of that education to where we are and the speed of that, and not working on just individual and training them and teaching them the basics, but we need to train them for what is coming forward, not what is behind. And I mean, some of that is important. So we do need to relook, I believe, at what these are with a very wide nomadic mindset, and then hone in as to where we can go. Because you need a very wide thinking for today, much more than I think 2015.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for giving this information. And I think you also raised one more important point, but about being a vegetarian. But it's a big subject we can't discuss. But thank you for being vegetarian. Personally, I don't even take dairy products apart from being vegetarian. So I think we will come back to this subject sometime in future, Kevin. We will definitely find time to discuss vegetarianism along with nomadic mindset in the next episode. So thank you so much for giving all this information to us today.
Thank you so much, Chandra. I really enjoyed it. Grateful to everybody.